Yo, 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 this is day 13 of reading every single day for the rest of my life. I'm so excited. Today we got An Actor's Handbook by Konstantin Stanislavski. Let me turn the brightness down a little bit. That's good. And yeah, I'm going to set 30 minutes right here. How y'all days doing? See, I can't talk. This is why I'm reading. All right. 30 minutes starting now. Okay. Speech. We need firm foundations for our art. In particular, the art of speech, the ability to speak verse, musical speech, opens up endless possibilities of conveying the inner life we experience on the stage. What can we express with our ordinary register of 5 or 6 notes? We realize how ridiculous we are when we have to convey complicated emotions. It is like playing Beethoven on the balalaika. Speech is music. Pronunciation on the stage is as difficult an art as singing. It acquires training and a technique bordering on virtuosity. When an actor adds the vivid ornament of sounds to the living content of the words, he causes me to glimpse with an inner vision the images he has fashioned out of his creative imagination. Every actor must be his own. Let me restart. When an actor adds the vivid ornament of sound to the living content of the words, he causes me to glimpse with an inner vision the images he has fashioned out of his own creative imagination. Every actor must be in possession of excellent diction and pronunciation. He must feel not only phrases and words, but also each syllable, each letter. You cannot bring back the spoken word. Poor speech even conceals the thought, its very plot. The audience will begin to fidget and finally to cough. This spells ruin for the play. One meaning of guarding against this is the use of clear, beautiful, vivid speech. To an actor, a word is not just a sound, it is the evocation of images. Your job is to instill your inner visions in others and convey it into words. Speech, tempo, rhythm. Letters, syllables, words, these are musical notes of speech, out of which to fashion measures, arias, whole symphonies. There is good reason to describe beautiful speech as musical. Words spoken with resonance and sweep are more affecting. In speech, as in music, there's a great difference between a phrase enunciated in whole, quarter, or 16th notes, or with triplets or quintuplets thrown in. In the first instance, there is calm. In the second, nervousness, agitation. Many actors who are careless of speech, inattentive to words, pronounce them with such thoughtless slipshod speed, without putting any endings on them, that they end up with completely mutilated, half-spoken phrases. In proper and beautiful speech, there should not be any of these manifestations, except where a change of tempo rhythm is called for a purpose for characterization of a part. Our difficulty lies in the fact that many actors lack a well-rounded training in two important elements of speech. On the one side, there is smoothness, resonance, fluency, and on the other, rapidity, lightness, clarity, crispness to the pronunciation of words. To achieve stately, slow speech, we need first of all to replace silent pauses with sonorous cadences, the sustained singing tone of the words. It will help you to read aloud very slowly to the timing of a metronome. If you are careful to preserve the smooth flow of the words in rhythmic measures, and also if you provide yourselves with the light of inner basis for your exercise. A clear-cut rhythm of speech facilitates rhythmic sensibility, and the opposite is also true. The rhythm of sensations experienced helps to produce clear speech. Of course, all this occurs in the cases where the precision of speech is thoroughly based on inner suggested circumstances and the magic if. Poetry arouses different emotions because of its different form from prose. But the converse is also true. Poetry has another form because we sense its subtext in a different way. One of the main differences between spoken prose and verse forms lies in their having different tempo rhythms, and the fact that their measures differ in their influence on our sensations, memories, or emotions. Even if we do not understand the meaning of words, their sounds affect us through their tempo rhythms. Think of verses in which tempo rhythms paint sound pictures, such as the ringing of bells and the clatter of horses' hooves. There is an indissoluble interdependence, interaction, and bond between tempo rhythm and feeling, and conversely, between feeling and tempo rhythm. The correctly established tempo rhythm of a play or a role can of itself, intuitively, on occasion, automatically take hold of its feelings of an actor and arouse in him a true sense of living his part. The direct effect of our mind is achieved by the words, the text, the thought, which arouse consideration. Our will is directly affected by the super-objective, by other objectives, by a through line of action. Our feelings are directly worked upon by tempo rhythm. Where does this lead us? To the inescapable conclusion offered us by the wide possibility inherent of our psychotechnique, namely that we possess a direct, immediate means to stimulate every one of our inner motive forces. Spoken lines. Words and the way they are spoken show up much more on the stage than in ordinary life. An actor should know his own tongue in every particular. Of what use will all the subtleties of emotions be if they are expressed in poor speech? Lines repeated so often in rehearsals and numerous performances are parroted. The inner content of the text evaporates. All that is left is mechanical sound. Save your lines for two important reasons. They will not be worn threadbare, and so that no mechanical chattering will disturb the basic pattern of the subtext. Spontaneity. A constant supply of spontaneity is the only way to keep a role fresh on the move. Lacking this is likely to fade after a few performances. The unexpected is often a most effective lever to creative work. Stage fright. The most important difficulty is the abnormal circumstance of an actor's creative work. It must be done in public. And muscular tautness, which interferes with inner emotional experience, will set in whenever an actor appears in public. I remembered helping a man pick up nails that had fallen on the stage. When I was rehearsing, then I was absorbed by the simple fact, and I forgot the black hole beyond the footlights. I realized that from the very moment I concentrated on something behind the footlights, I ceased to think about what was going on in front of them. In ordinary life, you walk and sit and talk and look, but on the stage, you lose these faculties. You feel the closeness of the public, and you say to yourself, why are they looking at me? All our acts become strained before a public of 1,000 people. When I stepped away from the darkness of the wings to the full illumination of the footlights, borderlights, and spotlights, I felt blinded. But soon my eyes became accustomed to the light, and the fear and attraction of the public seemed stronger than ever. I was ready to turn myself inside out, yet inside of me I never felt myself so empty. The effort to squeeze out more emotion than I had, the powerlessness to do the impossible filled me with a fear that turned my face and hands to stone. All my forces were spent on unnatural and fruitless efforts. I was making a failure, and in my helplessness I was suddenly seized with rage. For several minutes I cut loose from everything about me. I flung out the famous line, "Blood, Lago, blood." I felt in these words all the jury to the soul of a trusting man. It almost seemed for a moment the listener strained forward, and that through the audience there ran a murmur. The moment I felt this approval, a sort of energy boiled up in me. I cannot remember how I finished the scene, because the footlights and the black hole disappeared from my consciousness, and I was free from all fear. Stage setting. Surroundings have a great influence over your feelings. Surroundings have a great influence over your feelings. I don't know why I have trouble saying that. Surroundings have a great influence over your feelings. When the external production of a play is inwardly tied up with the spiritual life of the actors, it often acquires more significance on the stage than in real life. If it produces the right mood, it helps the actor to formulate the inner aspect of his role. It influences his whole psychic state and capacity to feel. Under such conditions, the setting is a definite stimulus to our emotions. Stimuli to emotion memory. The unusual impression is that a director uses all his material means, such as the set, the lighting, sound effects, and other accessories for the primary purpose of impressing the public. On the contrary, reuse these means for more of their effect on the actors, as external stimuli, calculated to create an illusion of a real life and its living moods. Another important source of stimulation of emotion is true physical action and your belief in it. You will become acquainted with many new inner sources of stimulation. The most powerful of them lies in the text of the play, the implication of thought that underlie it and affect the interrelationship of the actors. All these represent your psychotechnical store of riches, which you must learn to use. If your artistic emotions do not come to the surface spontaneously, concentrate your attention on the most effective kind of lure for them. The bond between the lure and the feeling is natural and normal, and one that should be extensively employed. Subconscious. One of the main objectives pursued in our approach to acting is the natural stimulus to the creativeness of organic nature and its subconsciousness. Our technique is directed towards putting our subconscious to work in the creation of artistic truth and to learning how to not interfere with it once it is in action. It is fair to say that this technique bears the same relation to subconscious creative nature as grammar does to poetry. We see, hear, understand, and think differently before and after we cross the threshold of consciousness. Our freedom on this side is limited by reason and conventions. Beyond it, our freedom is bold, willful, active, and always moving forward. Sometimes the tide of the subconscious barely touches an actor and then goes out. At other times it envelops his whole being, carrying him into his depth until at length it casts him up again into the shore of consciousness. It is all very pleasant to think that every bit of creativeness is full of exhalation and complexities. As a matter of actual fact, we find that even the smallest action of sensation, the slightest technical means, can acquire a deep significance on the stage. When this point is reached, your whole spiritual and physical makeup will functionally normal just as it does in real life. I want you to feel right from the start, if only for short periods, that blissful sensation which actors have their creative faculties are functionally, truly, and unconsciously. Moreover, this is something... I'm going to reread that. I don't like that. I want you to feel right from the start, if only for short periods, that blissful sensation which actors have when their creative faculties are functioning truly and unconsciously. I'm going to redo that again. I'm going to keep redoing this. I want you to feel right from the start, if only for short periods, that blissful sensation when actors have their creative faculties are functionally, truly, and unconsciously. Moreover, this is something you must learn through your own emotions and not only any theatrical way. You will learn to love this state and constantly strive to achieve it. Subtext. At the moment of performance, the text is supplied by the playwright and the subtext by the actor. If this were not the case, people would not go to the theater but sit at home and read the play. We are inclined to forget that the printed play is not finished piece of work until it is played on the stage by actors and brought to life by genuine human emotions. The same can be said of a musical score. It is not really a symphony until it is executed by an orchestra or musicians in a concert. As soon as people, either actors or musicians, breathe life of their own into the subtext of a piece of writing to be conveyed to an audience, the spiritual well springs, the inner essence are released. The whole point of any such creation is the underlying subtext. The line of a role is taken from the subtext, not from the text itself, but actors are lazy about digging down to the subtext. They prefer to skim along the surface, using the fixed words which they can pronounce mechanically. Without wasting any energy in searching out their inner essence, as this is unfortunately elusive and difficult to pin down, especially under exciting and distracting circumstances of a public performance, we have to have recourse to inner vision, thought, inner action. Words to an actor are not mere sounds, they are designs of visual images. The best way to avoid mechanical acting, the mechanical raffling off of the text of a role, is to communicate to others what you see on the screen of your inner vision. This will not be a reflection of reality, but images created by your imagination to suit the needs of imaginary characters you are playing. It is up to you to convert these images into reality. Each time you repeat the creative process of speaking the lines of your part, review in advance the series of prepared images on the screens of your inner vision. The most substantial part of the subtext lies in its thought, that conveys the line of logic and coherence in the most clear-cut, definite way. One thought gives rise to a second, a third, and altogether shape a superobjective. At times, the intellectual content of the subtext may predominate. At others, the lines of inner vision. It is best when they merge. Then the spoken word is filled with action. Words are part of the external embodiment of an inner essence of a role. When you reach the point when words are necessary to you to execute your objective to your best purpose, you will reach for the author's text as joyfully as a violinist reaches for the Amati's instrument offered to him. He knows that this will be the best means to express the feelings he harbors inside the depths of his soul. Superobjective. We use the word superobjective to characterize the essential idea, the core, which provided the impetus for the writing of a play. In a play, the whole stream of individual minor objectives, all the imaginative thoughts, feelings, and actions of an actor should converge to carry out this superobjective. Also, this impetus towards the superobjective must be continuous throughout the whole play. You cannot reach the superobjective by means of your mind. The superobjective requires complete surrender, passionate desire, unequivocal action. The most powerful stimuli to subconscious creativeness are the through line of action and the super-objective. They are the principal factors in art. Symbolism. It is a hard nut to crack, the symbol. It is successful when it has its source not in the mind, but in the inner soul. In this sense, symbol and grotesque are alike. It is necessary to play a role hundreds of times to crystallize its essence, to perfect the crystal, and in showing it, to interpret the quintessence of its contents. The symbol and grotesque synthesize feelings in the symbol and the grotesque synthesize feelings in life. They gather in bright, daring, and compressed form the multiform contents of the role. Symbolism, impressionism, and other highly distilled isms belong to the realm of superconscious and begin where ultranaturalism leaves off. But it is only when the inner and outer life of an actor on the stage is developed naturally, in accordance with the laws of nature, that superconscious will emerge from its secret sources. Talent. Talent is not easy to define or dissect. Talent is often buried deep and difficult to evoke. Talent is the fallacious combination of many creative capacities in a person, governed by its generative will. Technique exists above all for those who possess talent and inspiration. It serves consciously to stimulate superconscious creativity. The more talent the actor has, the more he cares about his technique. A true creative state while on the stage and all the elements that go in to compose it were the natural endowment of Shishkin, Ermolov, Duse, Salvini. Nevertheless, they worked unrelentlessly on their technique. Inspiration came to them by natural means almost every time they repeated a role, yet all their lives they sought an approach to it. In our art, it is very dangerous to mature too rapidly without determined effort. A talent may be no more than a pretty toy rattle. Talent includes physical attributes, memory, imagination, sensitiveness, impressionability. A person may be ugly in real life, but fascinating on the stage, and that is better than being beautiful. One may only have a modicum of various qualities, but make a powerful effect if possessed of stage charm. On the contrary, a much larger talent may be utterly ineffective, lacking the power to attract. Tempo, rhythm, and movement. It is more demonstrable to speak of inner tempo rhythm at the same time as outer tempo rhythm. When it becomes manifest in physical actions, in collective action and speech on the stage, you will have to find out and extract from the general chaos of tempo rhythms those you need and then regroup them so that you can shape your own independent individual lines of speech or measures of speech, movements, emotional experience in the roles being played by you. The right measure of syllables, words, speech, movements, and actions together with their clear-cut rhythm is the profound significance to an actor. Tempo rhythm does not possess the magic power to attract your inner mood. It excites not only your emotion memory, but it also brings your visual memory and its images to life. That is why it's wrong to take tempo rhythm to mean only measure and speed. We need it in combination with given circumstances which create a mood. We need it for the sake of its own inner substance. A military march, a stroll, a funeral procession may all be measured in the same tempo rhythm, yet what a world of difference between them as to their inner content which nourishes our feelings. We think, dream, grieve about things to ourselves in a special tempo rhythm because each moment is manifest in our lives. Where there is life, there is action. Whereas action, movement, where movement, tempo, and where there is tempo, there is rhythm. If an actor is intuitively right in sensing what is being said and done on the stage, the correct tempo rhythm will be created on his own accord. We deal with colors. We make combinations of all sorts of different speeds and measures. Different rhythms and tempi are to be found in simultaneous action, not only among the various actors performing in the same scene at the same time, but also inside one of them. At the point when the hero of the play or some particular person has to take a definite and strong stand, there are no contradictions and doubts. One all-embracing tempo rhythm is only appropriate if it is even necessary. But when, as in Hamlet's soul, resolution wrestles with doubt, various rhythms and simultaneous conjunction are necessary. In such cases, several different tempo rhythms provoke an internal struggle of contradictory origins. This heightens the actor's experience of his part, reinforces inner activity, and excites feelings. The tempo rhythm of a play is the tempo rhythm of the through line of action and the subtextual content of the play. Terminology. You cannot talk to actors in dry scientific language, and indeed, I cannot do it in any case. My task is to talk to an actor in his own language, not in order to philosophize about art, but rather to define creative feelings in verbal terms. Unfortunately, some of my fellow actors and followers adopted my terminology without testing its meanings. They understood me with their heads, but not their feelings. What is even worse is that they were completely satisfied with this. They spread my terminology and purported to teach my method. Nothing can be more hurtful to art than the use of a method for its own sake. The means may not be converted into the end goal. Text. To become the partner of the playwright, to perform his work on the stage, the actor must not only absorb the theme as a whole, but also its verbal form. He must not only know the words, but take them into himself organically until he has transformed them into his very own. Words, not impregnated with inner feelings, are spoken separately without relationship to others, are so many empty sounds. Yet the simplest words, if they convey complex thoughts, can change our whole outlook on life. Words can arouse all our five senses. Words on the stage must never lack feeling, ideas, actions, the creative value of the play in its inner content in its subtext. Words on the stage must never lack feelings. Words on the stage must never lack feeling, ideas, action. Words on the stage must never lack feeling, ideas, action. The creative value of the text of a play is in its inner content, in its subtext. Theater. One of the human being's principal feelings is longing for beauty, life-giving beauty, science, knowledge. Bereft of aesthetic quality, is arid. For that quality is what ennobles and enlivens everything it touches. The field of aesthetics is the field of theater. Theater possesses the great riches, the most powerful means for affecting thousands of spectators at one time and arousing their artistic emotions. The art of the theater is so vivid, pictorial, it illustrates a play so fully that it is accessible to all, from professor to peasant, from youth to old age. Good theater will always exist and be the prime goal of the art of the actor. Theater studio. This is neither a ready-made theater nor a school for beginners, but a laboratory for more or less mature actors. A studio should offer an opportunity to its members for testing their creative powers. It should facilitate the exploratory work of scene designers, directors of plays, and all the others who work in the theater. Before an artist goes to work on a big painting, he makes many sketches. If he is not satisfied with one of them, he tears it up and makes another. But in the theater, one cannot tear up the scenery, the many costumes, the necessary adjustments of any enterprise on the stage. And what about the tremendous human forces expended on it? Theatrical emotions. Our art is collective and complex. Even its trial sketches are costly in money and effort. But a studio, thanks to its modest dimensions, although it does not obviate the difficulties and expenses of trial sketches, nevertheless does offer the possibility of making them. In every theater, there are capable artists who, for one reason or another, are not thoroughly caught up in their work. Sorry, I'm taking off my shoes. Let them and directors of plays go into studios and put on a series of productions. In order to develop artistic creativeness, they must have initiative, and that is possible to develop only when there is a free field in which to do so. Each will arrive at the goal of our art in his own way, through his own mistakes and his own achievements. Look to the oldsters in the theater for experience, wisdom, endurance, and to the youngsters for effective initiative and intense devotion to work. Theatrical emotions. I took theatrical emotions, a kind of hysterical fit, as an outburst of inspiration. And I was mistaken. No matter how skillful an actor may be in his choice of stage conventions because of their inherent mechanical quality, he cannot move the spectators by them. He must have some supplementary means of arousing them, so he takes a refuge in what we call theatrical emotions. They are a sort of artificial imitation of the periphery of physical feelings. If you clench your fists and stiffen your muscles of your body or breathe spasmodically, you can bring yourself to a state of great physical intensity. This is often thought by the public to be an expression of a powerful temperament aroused by passion. Actors of a more nervous type can arouse theatrical emotions by artificially screwing up their nerves. This produces theatrical hysteria, an unhealthy ecstasy which is usually just lacking in inner content as the artificial physical excitement. In either case, we are not dealing with acting art, but with false acting. Here are no true feelings of an actor as a human being as adapted to a role. he is playing. What we have is theatrical emotion. Nevertheless, this kind of motion does have its effect. It hints at life, making something of an impression, because many people are not capable of discriminating in the quality of the impression made. They are satisfied with a coarse imitation of emotions. Even the actors of this type are themselves often convinced that they are serving the ends of true art. Muscular stimulation, which derives not from feelings but other sheer mechanical strain, excludes all possibility of thought and true emotional experience. Through line of action. The main theme gave birth to the writing of the play. It should also be the fountainhead of the actor's artistic creation. The inner line of effort that guides the actors from the beginning to the end of the play we call continuity, or the through-going action. The main line of action and the main theme are organically part of the play, and they cannot be disregarded without detriment to the play itself. The through line of action is a most powerful stimulant, and means of affecting the subconscious. That inner line galvanizes all the small units and objectives and directs them towards the super objective. From then, they all serve the common purpose. Also, this impetus must be continuous. I'm going to take off my real quick. Traditions. The art of theater is created by geniuses and talent. What they do dies with them, but their legacy of creativeness, traditions, credos by which they were unconsciously guided at the beginning of their artistic careers, in which they became aware and formulated in their more mature years, remain for posterity. Yet it is difficult to ascertain the spiritual essence of these traditions put into words or to catch their aroma. Often the whole accomplishment of the life is summed up into a brief formula. Such a distillation of a whole life of artistic activity can be endless source of interpretations, and we must broaden, deepen, heighten the meaning of their words. The greatest tradition of this kind is to be found, according to my way of thinking, in the saying of M.S. Shrispkin and Gogol. An artistic creation of the stage lives for a moment, yet no matter how magnificent it may be, it cannot be retained. The tradition of acting art lives on only in the talents and capacities of actors. In all ages it has only the talented actors who have understood which traditions were worthy of survival. By contrast, false traditions of performances which were once infused with the feelings of great actors have been handed down with us from generation to generation on an infinite number of artificial ways of external acting. Manner of declaiming. External expressions of all sorts of emotions. They can be only negative in meaning for us. Tragedy. If you tell an actor that his role is full of psychological actions, tragic depths, he will immediately begin to contort himself, exaggerate his passion, tear it to tatters. But if you give him some simple physical problem to solve, he will set about carrying it out without alarming himself or even thinking too deeply whether what he's doing will result in psychology, tragedy, or drama. To reach the great tragic heights, an actor must stretch his creative power to the utmost. That is difficult in the extreme. This state is brought about only by creative fervor, and that you cannot easily force. If you use unnatural means, you are apt to go off into some false direction. To avoid that error, you must have hold of something substantial, tangible. The significance of physical acts as highly tragic or dramatic moments is emphasized by the fact that the simpler they are, the easier it is to grasp them. The approach to drama and tragedy, or to comedy and vaudeville, differs only to the given circumstances which surround the actions of the person you are portraying. In the circumstances lie the main power and meaning of these actions. Consequently, when you are called upon to experience tragedy, do not think about your emotions at all. Think about what you have to do. A person in the midst of experiencing a poignant emotional drama is incapable of speaking of it coherently. For at such times tears choke at him, his voice breaks, but time, the great healer, makes it possible for him to bear himself calmly in relation to past events. He cannot speak of them coherently, slowly, intelligibly, and as he relates a story, he remains calm while those who listen weep. Our art seeks to achieve this very result and requires that an actor experience the agony of his role. at home or in rehearsals, that he then calm himself to convey to the audience in clear, pregnant, deeply felt, intelligible, and eloquent terms what he has been through. At this point, the spectators will be more affected than the actor. So it's like work so hard that you're just like you get a little, angry about it, like agony, like you're like, rah, like you just let it out. Like that's what you do on stage. You basically just let it out. It's cool. I really love this. True acting. Oh, no. Tricks. Effective adaptation. A contrivance or trick is a vivid expression of inner feelings or thoughts. It can call attention to you. Prepare... Oh, looks like that's 30 minutes. Thanks for watching. See you guys on day 14. 2 weeks. Let's go.